when we were chatting the other week about doing this, I was getting this excitement about me because there's so many parts to your story and it all culminates, it all comes to here.
It
really,
seems so, yeah.
And it's the business is a reflection of that. And I mean, obviously it's a beautiful story because it's a beautiful business. It's a beautiful place. And you were saying that, people that come here, they feel it. They get a certain something from it.
Yeah. So
much so that they're bringing you food.
They bring me food. They bring me offerings. They bring me fabrics. They bring me, they bring me parts. And it's like they bring me parts of themselves.
Yeah.
To share. And I honour that. I feel very honoured by that. I feel, it's just a blessing to be able to, when you see the light in their eyes when they come in and go, I brought you morning tea, and you're like, I barely know your name, and and yet we're having this exchange, this connection.
Yeah.
You think to yourself, I've done something really special here. This is something in the world that doesn't happen much. That doesn't happen enough.
Yeah.
And I think because that's been given to me in the past, or perhaps because I've recognised that in the past, or I've been able to not recreate it but be inspired by it, and say, I want that. I want that. If I'm going to have a shop, or if I'm going to write a book, if I'm going to do this, I want to do that. I want that thing, That is not always money. That is not always six figures. That is not always, sitting on a beach in Bali with my laptop on my lap thinking, I've made it. That, for me, is something completely different. Yeah. So in terms of my story, which was the original question, I started off in retail many, many years ago when I first left school, working alongside my parents, who've got a long history in retail and wholesale. And they basically taught me everything I know about retail. They had a very successful business here on the Central Coast for over 30 years. But then, I did lots of different things. I had dabbled a little bit in creative arts. I've done, arts teaching. I've done, all kinds of different things. Always been a writer, always been a performer, did some singing, did some songwriting, had some success with that, won a few awards. And then in 2003 we found ourselves up on the mid-north coast of New South Wales with a little shop, not dissimilar to this. Our 4 kids were quite young. My husband and I were there both working in the business and working hard, so working 6 or 7 days a week, both of us, with the kids, trying to maintain all of that. When I found myself getting more and more unwell, and it was at that stage I was diagnosed with stage 3B cancer. So it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood-based cancer, and I was very ill. So at that point, of course, all life just stops. Everything just, this is our priority, this is what we have to do.
That's right.
So I went into treatment. I had 3 months of chemotherapy, 3 months of radiotherapy. That radiotherapy I had to have in Sydney, so I went down to Sydney and stayed there by myself for 3 months without my family to have that treatment. It was a life-changing experience in terms of, working out my priorities and who I was and what it meant, to kind of, I was really confronted with my mortality. What was important, living in a hostel for 3 months with other people who had cancer, that were dying of cancer, or living with cancer. It was very interesting. And it just gave me a whole different perspective on life. So life was no longer all about money. It was, those things just were like, okay, well, it's nice, but it's not everything. In a moment, everything can change. I knew people that had worked their whole lives to retire, to go and travel and do this, and we're going to do that, we're going to do this, to have one of them diagnosed within months of retirement of a fatal cancer. And I just thought, that's not the life I want. I don't want to live the rest of my life, however long I've got, like that. So I was fortunate enough to have someone who could work in the shop for me while I was unwell, but within months of coming back home, we decided to close the shop. And my life was never really the same. I went off on a path of cancer advocacy for a while, so I spent quite a few years working closely with the Cancer Council as a volunteer and an employee as well, like working in the cancer sphere, cancer support, raising money, doing all that kind of stuff. And it was a way of me working out my cancer experience.
Sure, yeah.
And that was at the stage where I wrote my books. So I decided to plumb back into that gifting that I had as a writer and developed that, and wrote a couple of books, became a published author. So I self-published 4 books, and then went back into retail again for a while. So it's been sort of a bit of a roundabout journey. We found ourselves back on the Central Coast here a couple of years ago. I had a fairly significant mental breakdown when we came back. I was getting unwell. We were out travelling at that time, and I was getting unwell. I could feel it. Mental health is something that I have to manage.
Sure.
Have always had to manage. And I basically was going downhill really quickly. So we came back to the Central Coast where we have family, and I had a fairly significant mental breakdown once we got here, which was pretty horrible. It was probably even worse in many ways than the cancer was. Coming back from that was a bit of a journey. It took a lot of relearning self-care and relearning boundaries, and I basically had to rebuild again. But that was a couple of years ago now. It was funny because coming out of that, when I was first in the depression, the deepest part of the depression, I couldn't leave the house. But then as I started to, obviously I got into management of the depression, and I had a good psychologist, and I was taking medication, and started to feel a little bit better, and I wanted to get myself out of the house. So I used to leave the house every day and go op shopping, because op shopping is my happy place.
Therapy.
Honestly, it is just, and people who do it like I do it, no, it was my happy place. When I was walking around op shopping, I was not thinking about anything depressing. I was not thinking about anything, none of those thoughts would come to me when I was op shopping, so I would go every day. And then I saw some online on Pinterest, I saw some jewellery that I really liked that was made out of all broken bits and pieces, and I thought, I can do that. So I watched a few YouTube videos of how to make jewellery, and I pulled some of these bits apart that I had and made some funky, crazy bits of jewellery, and I thought, well, this is all right, isn't it? And I put it on Etsy and Facebook and Instagram, and people started to buy it. And I thought, oh, this is great, I can do this. So all of a sudden I had a hobby. And so it was part of my recovery process, was this using my creative abilities, getting out of the house every day, and the idea too of using the broken, of putting back together what had been thrown away, had been discarded by somebody else, gathering it back up and nurturing it back into something beautiful, which has always been part of my jam. I really believe in that. Yeah, and it just grew from there. I was in the shower one day and dreamed up the name Sister Jo Bangles, and I thought, yeah, that really encapsulates, the joy and the serendipity kind of onomatopoeic joy of what I'm doing with the crazy jewellery, and people started asking me for clothes to go with the jewellery, so I started buying clothes as well as jewellery and ripping them up and sewing them back together, and a business was born. And that's really how it started. So bringing everything that's happened to me, all the things that I've learned, all the things that I know, all the things I'm good at, and not just that, but all the lows. So the depression, the cancer, all of those places that I had to go to in those times as well, and bringing all that into it as well, and allowing myself to remain vulnerable, not pretending that I'm all fixed up and nothing to see here, everything's fine, like look at me, I run a business, but saying, Sister Jo Bangles is a culmination of all the life experiences that I've had, good and bad, all the me's that I've been, because I've had to reinvent myself so many times just to survive. And she is me, like a lot of businesses who are, the person who starts them. I know that she is me, but she will not be me unless I'm real, unless I agree to be who I am in every moment in this business, to make decisions that are based on authenticity, even down to the buying decisions of what comes into the shop. Every object is picked with attention and care. you know, because I want this to be a place where people walk in and they feel a certain way. So I'm very careful with what I buy because I want my customers to feel that energy, to feel that joy, that vibration.
Yeah.
And when I make my clothes, I do the same thing. I try and imbue them with joy and with a joyous energy, so that when people put them on, they feel that, they feel good, they feel inspired, they feel more like themselves. You know, they feel connected to who they really are. And just the whole philosophy of getting something that's just thrown away, you know, that no one wants anymore, that, you know, they throw away and forget about. And how many of us, you know, feel like we've been thrown away and forgotten about? And I wanted Sister Jo Bangles to be about that, about the gathering up of the forgotten and broken parts of ourselves, and of putting them all back together and, you know, imbuing them with beauty and love and connection and, yeah, all of that. So that's sort of how Sister Jo Bangles came about and got me to here. Yeah. That's
incredible. And this is what I was saying before about the story behind the story kind of thing. You know, really, I mean, that it's an incredible story because it's brought you to this incredible place. And it's benefiting everyone who comes in here because they're receiving a part of you. I mean, everything in here represents you, as you were saying, represents something from you, a part of you. And through your travels, you're now helping your journey. You're now helping others.
Yeah.
You know, with what you've been through, and the beauty that's come from that is now being shared.
That's right.
And that's how do you measure the value